Hey, you guys, welcome back. I'm Richard Sachs, and this is Lost Arts Radio's live safe stream, or just safe stream version. And this is in honor of the terms and conditions and community guidelines of YouTube, which is keeping us safe from things that we need to not be aware of and not think about, and certainly not talk about. So we're trying to honor that and stay in connection with you instead of totally disappearing, and inviting you to stay in touch with us at lostartsradio.com, just in case, because these platforms are always changing and we're showing up on new non-censored ones all the time. So lostartsradio.com is the place to stay in touch. What what I'm doing, since we still have the Lost Arts Radio live show just on other platforms where we're less likely to disappear for the moment, and I invite you to go to that. lostartsradio.com/live will give you the links to go there. Whether you're going there at the right time live or to see the recorded archive, either way works fine. So what I'm doing to keep this one going is sometimes saying some things that are a little unusual, that are opposite of what's actually meant. And some people were complaining and saying, "You're too sarcastic." And then I stopped doing that, and they said, "Where's your sarcasm? You're not being sarcastic enough." And I wasn't sure how to please both groups at once. I'm sure there's a way to do that. But in any case, what we usually do is cover some little part of what's going to be on the live show, and I'll try to do that today. And I was thinking, what do I want to share with you? And week to week, time is just going so fast now, and the stuff that we've taken on to do, it just goes by in minutes. A week goes by in minutes. It literally feels like about 10 minutes since we were here last time. And I thought, all right, what can we talk about that would be useful, not just, momentary entertainment or momentary interesting facts, and you say, oh yeah, those are interesting facts and it's true, or you disagree and you say it's not true and you move on to the next thing. I don't want to take your time for that. So I thought, what would actually have some meaning and what would be important? And I try to think about that every time as well as possible. And I like some of the things in the story of Dune, and you remember that was by Frank Herbert. Really neat sci-fi movie that you can still get online or hard copy DVD. And the father, Duke Leto Atreides, was talking to his son, who was kind of the hero of the movie, and he was saying, "The sleeper must awaken." It's just struck me that that's our current situation. I just finished a really interesting discussion with Joel Skousen that will be broadcast this weekend. Like, it's already this weekend, so today, tomorrow, you'll see it up. And the reason it struck me to get him on, it was Doug's suggestion, but I thought it was a good idea in timing. It worked out perfect because he was just on Alex Jones's show. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say Alex Jones without saying how terrible Alex is. And he's a curse to humanity, and he's one of the worst people, and he's an agent of every bad country in the world. So now I've taken care of that. And I can tell you that discussion was really, it wasn't very cheerful. Joel's outlook is dark. It's what you call black-pilled in a lot of respects. But I wrote a couple of notes down about it, that if you see me looking down, it's to see if I'm remembering what I wrote down that I wanted to tell you. And I mentioned that Joel's outlook is very dark. Joel's a brilliant geopolitical analyst, in my opinion, and he's got a newsletter called World Affairs Brief, worldaffairsbrief.com. You can get free introductory issue there if you want. I don't get paid for that. I'm not, this is the reason that we're out of money and starving, is because I'm not doing anything that could be even remotely construed as, hypocritical or dishonest. All of us have things like that in our previous life that we're not, clear enough, and I'm trying to make that good now. But the result is, if I recommend something to you, it's probably for the amazing reason because I actually think it's good. And Joel's newsletter, what I've seen of it is really good. And he was on Alex's show, so I invited him back. And the discussion that you'll see posted in the next day or so, we went over what he talked about, starting with the Ukraine situation. You know, they have this country called Ukraine in western border of Russia, and it's a really critical place because it provides a lot of the food for it did for the Soviet Union and now does for Russia. It's really fertile, rich place, and NATO, kind of as a proxy of the U.S. and the Eastern version of the globalists, are both fighting over that. And Joel thinks it's going to be invaded by Russia. I mean, it used to be part of Russia at different times in history. And Alex, who's a really good historian in many ways, has said that Ukraine really was the starting point of Russia. And so NATO is trying to basically take it into their organization, even though it was promised that they wouldn't do that. And Russia's not anxious to have that happen. And Joel thinks it's going to be an invasion. And these situations are going to get hotter and hotter until the three poles that he sees of the globalists, which means the West, you know, U.S., England, and other allies being one pole, and then there's also China, and then there's also Russia. And he said, in the end, Russia and China will ally in a nuclear strike against the U.S., and then after the U.S. is taken care of, Russia and China will fight for the top position. In other words, a continuation of the mess that we call known world history, where everybody's constantly killing each other for power, except with the technology, modern technology, that makes it possible to wipe out life on Earth. So not a very bright outlook. He sees those three groups of the globalists working towards enslavement of humanity. And actually, after the U.S., in his scenario, gets wiped out, he sees the globalists coming in as a centralized world government, and the Western people are supposed to beg them to take over to avoid being dominated by Russia and China, and that's going to enslave the world prior to the goal, which I see as the total extermination of life on the planet. I think that's where they're going, and they could do it quickly if they wanted to, and the fact that they're not, and that we have some time to try to solve that and avoid it and reverse it, is because it's more of not a money and power thing at the top. It's more of a religious, their version of a dark spiritual agenda to achieve union with the dark non-human forces. And so they're doing it step by step, like a global ritual sacrifice. And I think that's what they're doing. And it really doesn't matter. It matters what's happening step by step in real time. And so at the moment, it looks like Joel is quite possibly correct that the U.S. has set a strategy to absorb a first nuclear strike, to play along with this game of being wiped out so that the global centralized world government with the space-based weapons can take over and proceed toward extermination, neutralizing Russia and China, to the great disappointment of their leaders, finding out that they are not going to dominate the world as a country either. Everybody will be enslaved in Joel's scenario, and that will result in peace, in quotes. You know, if everybody's either a prisoner or dead, that would be very peaceful, I guess. He really sees a dark age coming with no foreseeable way out. And as I said, his analysis is really not unreasonable. And he was just looking at the outlook for nuclear war, which would be enough to accomplish all these things. But there's a lot of other sub-agendas in the ultimate goal as well that are in play now, like geoengineering and poisoned agriculture, where our food is actually being raised with chemicals and poisons and then fed to the people. That's not brilliant, unless you want to kill everybody, of course. So it's not an accident. And it goes together with toxic medicine and fiat money and the criminal media and the fake education system teaching people how not to be able to think anymore, and certainly not to have any contact with their intuition. and all the suppressed human-friendly technology that these, fake leaders who talk about environmentalism, and they always avoid the fact that solar and wind are really, not adequate to take over from petroleum. You need the more advanced technologies that are already ready to go, but they're being suppressed. And the people who try to bring them out have this little problem that they keep getting killed. Dr. Greer's working on that, and some other people too. Um, anyway, you've got all these sub-agendas that are working at the same time toward enslavement and extermination, and it's all designed for maximum overkill, so that even if some of those agendas don't come to fruition, enough of them will to end life on this planet, not just humans, but all of it. And what that analysis leaves out, because I was really looking, I don't feel like accepting that outcome, and hopefully you don't either. That even if you don't care about your own life, at least maybe you care about the lives of the future generations and the kids that are alive now, counting on all of us to leave the world in a better situation. But I think it's for us too. Whatever days of our lives we've got left, even some of us that are pretty old, why not make those as good as we can? So I was looking for, what has Joel overlooked? What has he not talked about that gives us a chance to turn it around? And I think all of the actions like David Icke and Chris Sky and all these brilliant leaders of noncompliance talk about mass noncompliance and, nonviolent, peaceful refusal to go along with the suicidal agenda. I think those are all great. But by themselves, I don't think they're enough, because there's evidence now, signs of the global rulers just pushing ahead, even though they get exposed, even though there's demonstrations, and just say, well, forget it, we're just going to do the same thing anyway. And they work on making sure that the courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court, are all compromised, and, they will uphold the crime. So there's got to be something else besides, and there are valiant efforts toward law-based solutions with Reiner Fulmick and other people like that. But what else is there? What's more powerful? And I think that, after looking at this a lot, not just with Joel's recent conversation with Alex, but a lot of instances before with these various people making proposals of what we can do, I think what Joel's analysis leaves out is something that is hard for us to grasp if we're focused only on the physical level of events. But even in this relatively dark age of consciousness, where science is really arrogant and proud, but it doesn't know much of anything, and most of what it knows is, to put it politely, not accurate. A lot of what it knows is not accurate. And it really thinks it's got the whole picture. And people are trained to think that, because then they can be used as tools to further the suicidal agenda. And that needs to be waked up. So what it leaves out is the fact that, as quantum physics has suggested, the nature of this so-called solid reality is not what it looks like. The solid matter is not really solid matter. The whole thing is, and I just, I realize that I run the risk of being seen as completely insane and crazy to say any of this, but I think this is the reason that this is hard to access is because it looks crazy, even though there's a strong reality in it. And that is the dream nature, the projected dream nature of the whole situation, and the solid reality that is not what it seems. And the dream nature of it is connected to who we really are. And so and I've got to stop in a minute and get ready for the live show. But the basic idea is that we're not the helpless, dumb, incompetent, stupid beings that we're being told that we are. I think the biggest fear, I've looked at the fears of the global rulers, and they have a lot of fears. They live in fear. And the reason they live in fear is it's an automatic thing that they can't get away from because they're going against their nature completely and choosing darkness. They could reverse that at any point, and they're not doing it, and that makes them constantly uneasy, fearful, angry, hateful, and wanting to make sure that we don't wake up out of their trance and find out who we really are. So the argument that the world is doomed leaves out really what our most powerful option is. And that is what reminded me of the quote from Dune that the sleeper must awaken. I thought that was great. And it's deeper and more accurate than maybe Frank Herbert realized, or maybe he did realize it and he was talking about the same thing. So what does it mean that the sleeper must awaken in 2 minutes, which is about what we got left? It's a long subject. And it's so outside the normal way of thinking that it probably takes a lot more than 2 minutes to talk about. But the idea is that up to now, in what's known in history, much of which is wrong, is just written in so that we'll believe it. But in history as we know it, we've had lots of beliefs, almost every kind of belief you can imagine. And the world is still in the hands of the dark forces. The beliefs didn't do it. I'm not saying they weren't useful in various ways, but they didn't solve the problems. And you had billions of people following the dark forces, even with the beliefs. And what was missing? Why has it been going on the way it is? And now it's in danger of complete, catastrophic breakdown and elimination of life on this planet. And I think a simple way of saying what was missing is moving from belief to direct experience. In other words, okay, that's a very nice belief about God or spiritual things or whatever, the real nature of life. Let's you apply it, and not just in a way that, it makes you feel better, but lets you apply it in a way that changes things in the world so they don't have to go to total destruction. What are the tools that work to do that while we still have time? And how do you do it? I see that as the issue, because on the surface, I think Joel could be right, and it doesn't look very optimistic. Lots of great people doing things, showing the reality and the hypocrisy of the rulers and all that, and they're just going ahead. And I think we're missing access to our main potential power to turn this around and reverse it, not necessarily to destroy the bad guys, because who they really are under their costume is not destructible anyway, and doesn't need to be. If we could wake them up and have them divert from their current plan, then they don't have to be destroyed anyway, even if you could do it. So the work to do is internal. It doesn't mean you stop your external activities and you want to try to protest world government, the globalist, geoengineering, poison food, fluoride. All those things are important. But what gives it power and changes the outcome is what consciousness is it coming from. And we're so out of touch with that. We think, oh, that's just kind of a new agey, belief that doesn't really do anything. And I think that's where we're making an important mistake. So we're going to talk about that more in the live show. And I've gone too long, so I got to go get ready for that. But remember, you're invited, and there are other platforms we're on, some of which are not kicking us off. And why don't you come over there, and we'll have the rest of the discussion. Okay, so anyway, stay in touch, lostartsradio.com. Take care of yourself. Do your New Year's resolution every day, but don't drop it in a day. Find out what you can improve in yourself, and it affects the whole outside of your life, your relations with everybody else. What you do in yourself changes the behavior of other people without saying a word. It sounds really weird and impossible, but I think it's what we're missing. And there's so much power in it, and we don't know how much time is left in this chapter. So I'm recommending that we all do that for the first time on a level that's actually going to change things. That's my idea. See what you think. Give me your feedback. Stay in touch, lostartsradio.com. Share the links watch the real live show. And if you want to work on this with us, that's what Planetary Healing Club is for. You can access that at planetaryhealingclub.com, or just do it yourself, or do it in whatever way feels right according to your own inner sense of guidance. But we need to change course right now and not stop the outer activity that is good, but fuel it with something on the inside that's totally different, hasn't been done before, and this is a good time to do it for the first time. So I'll see you in a few minutes if you join us for the other show, okay? And if not, remember, we've got a Sunday show too with incredible guests, and that's happening tomorrow. In fact, Joel will be there. That's the talk I was referring to. So take care, and hopefully I'll see you in a few minutes at the regular live show. Take it easy.